So we finished up playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, The Siege of Paris, which is like the second big official DLC that they have put out for this game. We finished up playing that on the Twitch stream last week, and now I got all the videos up on YouTube. So I want to create a quick thoughts kind of mini review. You guys know the format of this stuff now, to kind of put down what I think about the game, and if I think you should pick up the DLC yourself if you're into Valhalla, or maybe you've never played Assassin's Creed before at all and you're thinking about it, or you're coming back to the series. So let's jump into that. But I mean, before we do, of course, this is YouTube. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel if you've never been here before, and comment down below on if you played the game, what you thought about it, or the DLC, and maybe what you think about if you're going to pick it up or not. So let's talk about it. Assassin's Creed Valhalla was a pretty good game to kind of frame this. So far in the game, I think I put about 135 to 140 hours in the game total. I kind of had like 98% completion. I really didn't understand what I was missing, but I wasn't going to go like deeply searching for it. But I did have a lot of time in this game. I am a fan of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. While I don't think it's like necessarily my favorite Assassin's Creed, I think this, it really was. The Assassin's Creed as it went open world RPG, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is really kind of where they nailed what I think they were looking to do with Odyssey and Origins before that, right? So I am a fan of the game overall. While I did think it had a lot of problems with the story, it definitely went on too far. And a lot of things just really didn't make you feel like an assassin. Overall, I thought the game was good. I also enjoyed the Wrath of Druids. I thought it was more of a continuation of Valhalla. More than a departure into a newer type of gameplay, or like a return to old, which we'll get to later for Siege of Paris. It was just a true extension of Valhalla. Everything that worked in Valhalla, they put into that game, and everything that didn't work in Valhalla didn't really work in the DLC, although I really like the story a lot more in Wrath of Druids. So here we are at Siege of Paris. One of my biggest things I'm going to say right up front is story-wise, I absolutely love the story. I thought the Fat Charles and Odo, who you come over there, I forget the guy's name with S, who's like the big brother in this game. Like the story of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, The Siege of Paris is actually really enjoyable. And because it's a more condensed down experience, and it's not stretched out over 60 hours like, Valhalla, they really are able to make a story that kind of feels impactful, it feels tight, and doesn't really have too many pacing issues. And one thing I really did also enjoy about this is that they really didn't hide who the bad guy was. Like, you knew Fat Charles is kind of like the big bad of this DLC, right? And they don't really hide that. He's a bad character up front. They don't really make it seem like he's like someone who is working with you, and oh no, there's a twist, which is kind of a played out trope in Assassin's Creed, where we all know who the bad guy is. Another thing that they didn't do in this DLC that I think played to their advantage is they stopped with the cultist nonsense. I think in all of the Assassin's Creed, something that kind of was a great idea before, but really never panned out into anything that special, was the idea of the cultists, or a hidden group that you're like, you got your assassination list and you're going after them one by one. They kind of, they did that in the Wrath of the Druids, but they did away with it in the Siege of Paris. And I think that really worked to their advantage. They haven't really been doing anything with the cultists, or like the story of the cult and who they are. There's nothing impactful about that gameplay aspect. The only thing that ever really worked for that was like in AC Origins, I believe, where you had a good story for kind of each of the big targets in there. So I'm really happy that they did away that aspect in Siege of Paris. I thought it was really cool. Another thing, I loved what they did in the gameplay of this DLC was that they made me feel like an assassin again. As so much of Assassin's Creed is upfront combat, and then when they make you do assassin missions, it's just kind of all up front. Like, here's the guy you got to kill. You should probably go this way, and then you can kill him. Like, there's no real tactics to it. You don't really have a choice in how you kill him, where you kill him. It just kind of feels like there's a guy, go kill him the way we want to. But they don't do that in Siege of Paris. Specifically, they tell you a couple of times, like, here's your target. You can go do this to find your way to kill him, or you can kind of get in going through this way, or you can just explore and find your own way in. So every assassination attempt you have in this game, you actually have choices in how you're going to do it. And now, are those the biggest, most impactful choices? Not really, but the fact that I had a choice at all on how I was going to do this really helped the gameplay out and made me feel like I had actual agency over how this was going to play out, rather than just being kind of on a roller coaster, right? So I really did enjoy and love that. When it comes to the items, they did add a new weapon type, the scythe. Before in the Wrath of Druids, they had like that sickle, the like little one-handed, sickle thing, I guess. I don't know. Which I thought was like an all right weapon type. And then the scythe they added on just kind of felt the same. I never really wanted to use them because I just feel there's other weapon types in this game that feel so good. Why not use them? The spears still reign supreme. The scythes just kind of felt like slower spears that did less damage. It was weird. I don't know what it was. I do have a really great spears. Like I have like, you know, the top ones that they all extend. It's like Odin spear or whatever it is. So it's hard to beat those. But I just don't feel like the scythe really felt that distinct or decisive outside of the artwork, which looked cool. I don't know. I feel the weapons and the armor and the Assassin's Creed DLCs are just a little bit underwhelming. I still didn't upgrade my armor. I still didn't really change it out that much. I wish they would I wish they would let like the armor that you get in these DLCs be wildly better than the ones you get in the base game. But they can't really do that because they don't want these weapons or they don't want these DLCs to feel like in-game content. All the levels around it are like level 200. So you're supposed to be playing this around power level 200. If you pick up the base game with the DLCs, power level 200, that's when you're supposed to go into it, right? And I'm not. I'm like, I was like level 410 or something like that when I'm going into it. Like I'm way over leveled for this area. So nothing really ever felt challenging. And then I never really felt like I was upgrading anything to get better. It's just kind of a weaker part, I think, of the Assassin's Creed DLCs. It's because they want to keep these things fresh and viable for people who aren't at the end game, which is just, it's a bit of a disappointment. Graphically, you know, this game does more of the same. That Valhalla is beautiful. It's a beautiful engine, man. I was even playing this one on medium because I went back down to a one PC setup for recording all that. And I still thought the game was gorgeous. They really do capture what in my mind France kind of looks like, you know. Like I've never been to France, but in my head, this is what the French countryside looks like. And if that's the goal for them to kind of match that, and they did it perfectly. There were so many things where I felt like it was like Beauty and the Beast. And of course, being in Paris was amazing. Even just from a gameplay aspect, it felt really good to be back in Assassin's Creed game where you kind of had a tighter city, where you had a lot of rooftops kind of close together. The closest thing we got to this so far has probably been an Odyssey when we went to like Athens or stuff, but still kind of felt too open, too sprawling. Didn't really feel like Assassin's Creed. When you go to Paris, it does kind of feel that way. You know, it's not modern day Paris. It still has a lot of the olden days medieval stuff that kind of doesn't, you know, really feel like the newer stuff, right? But like it feels like you're in a tighter city where you have alleyways, you have rooftops that are together, and you kind of feel like you're crawling through a city. It felt very Assassin's Creed. I wish we could get back to that type of stuff because that's what I love about the series. And then, of course, the end at the Siege of Paris was a huge set piece that felt better than any of the raids they did in this game. It felt cinematic. It felt like there was problems you had to solve in it. This is the actual Siege of Paris, which I guess they had to name because it's the DLC's namesake. They had to nail it, and they did. The Siege of Paris was fun. It was one of the better sequences I feel out of the Assassin's Creed series in the past couple of years or maybe decade. Because one of the biggest problems I think Assassin's Creed has is that they're trying to do open world, and I do think they make kind of good open world games. It's nothing on the level of like Rockstar, but they do make pretty decent open world RPGs that if you really, you know, if it didn't have the Assassin's Creed brand on top of it, I think people would really appreciate these games for their open world RPG-ness. You know, there's definitely some problems in their mechanics, I think, or their systems that kind of don't feel as rewarding as other open world RPGs, but it's a pretty big lived in. Like the world that feels alive is open RPG, and it feels more alive and lived in a way that like Skyrim even itself really doesn't. So that being said, if it didn't have the Assassin's Creed brand on top of it, I think people would like that, right? But what I think Assassin's Creed needs to go to is something more like an Uncharted series where you have a very directed narrative thing, and you just you're kind of on more of a roller coaster, and then once you get to your set pieces, you can figure out how you want to assassinate people, like a more controlled narrative and story. And the Siege of Paris, I bring all this up because the old set piece, the Siege of Paris, where you're actually doing the thing, they actually deliver on that idea where it feels more of a narrative, feels more driven in one direction. And I think it absolutely worked, and I wish they would do more of that. So I kind of, in the last part, got away from the quick thoughts. Here we are at like a 9-minute video. So thank you guys for hanging out and checking out. At the very end of it, like to sum it all up, if you enjoyed Valhalla, you're going to love Siege of Paris. I think this is the best version of Valhalla that they actually have out there. If you're thinking about picking up Valhalla based on Siege of Paris, I think it's good. I think it'll fit in nicely with Valhalla. So yes and yes, you should buy Valhalla. It's a fantastic game. You get a lot of bang for your buck. And then, of course, the Siege of Paris is a great DLC that I think anyone who enjoyed Valhalla is going to absolutely love. That's it for the video. If you guys enjoyed this review, make sure you leave a like. If you didn't like it, you can leave a dislike. Thanks for hanging in there and checking out the video anyways. And let me know below in the comment section why you didn't like the video. You know, do me that favor so I can kind of help you out in the future, or help the channel out in the future and figure out what we're doing wrong. All right, that's going to do it for the video. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do that on your way out, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, everybody. Man, look at this basic big horse you're riding, dude. Look at this. Look at this plain ass horse my man has. Excuse me, fancy horse coming through. Look at this. Ah.